So, hello everyone. We are here for another CSM20 interview. We have a new person who has never run before, so we're going to get to hear from them. Just a reminder, this is a interview with dual purposes. One is giving the CSM a platform in order to get their message out and try to get votes, but it's also for my communities, both Everkeys and Warm Life, to be able to decide who is going to go on our ballots. So, like I say, dual purpose. But now we're going to go ahead and get into it. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your Eve career, who you fly with.
Sure. So I'm Sven Bauer. Been playing this game pretty much every single day since I really got started in 2019. Um, from the very beginning, I I got hooked pretty much the first day. After like a small little 2-week tryout in like 2016, I um I got ganked by goons in high sec in my retriever and
Ooh.
asked the local who their enemies were, and then joined Horde on like my third day of actually playing. And spent the first couple of years in Horde, kind of learning how to play the game, just like typical new player stuff. Got to experience World War B2 with Horde, which was really fun. Um, I was still in the stage before Bitter Vet where everything was new and exciting, and like just the scale of everything was just incredible. And yeah, like my first ever Dread loss was in FWST. I jumped in, sieged, immediately died. A little anticlimactic, but can you do? Um, yeah, spent some time in Horde, first like 2-ish years. Then as the war kind of ground to a halt, started becoming a little bit more checked out. There was a couple more conflicts that I was part of, of BFL for, which is like the Horde tryhard sig. Did some cool stuff with that. Kind of got a little bit better at the game. Um, and then after the Fireco eviction of the Southeast, when Init and Horde evicted Fireco, there's a big old chunk of space open. The blocks kind of said, "Hey, let's carve this out for new groups in nullsec." And I was like, "Hey, I want to try out some new stuff in Eve." I said, "Fuck it," and packed my bags and went to go see what groups were out in this new area of space. I ended up with a alliance called Hard Commit,
Okay.
and it was like 12 guys. We took pretty much all of Dead Rid, held it for like 2 months, and I got rolled by Deepwater hooligans, which had at the time more dreads than we had characters in the alliance. Um, so spent some time doing that like very small scale nullsec thing. It was super fun, super chaotic. But like I love this game, and I've continually had like a hunger to experience new stuff. So um, kind of seen the writing on the wall with the Southeast Agreement kind of falling apart. I was like, hey, might as well try out some of this low sec warlording stuff that Big Eb seems to be doing. And so we our alliance merged into Setos Corp, current CSM member, Outback Steakhouse with Pancakes. And then I spent the next 2 years kind of doing try hard low sec stuff, which was super fun. Like learning how dread brawls work, like theory crafting stuff for heavy armor brawls and that sort of thing. Like really stepping up my like confidence and skill with hunting and organizing fleets and that sort of thing. And then recently I kind of saw the big nullsec war on the horizon. Or I thought it was a big nullsec war on the horizon, the rumblings of war, and I kind of wanted to like, because as a new player, I'd experienced World War B2. I didn't really fully understand like what was involved with running that kind of a campaign, and so I really wanted to experience a big nullsec fight from like kind of my new perspective. And so I'm back in Horde. I joined up with the tryhards of Horde Vanguard, and yeah, it's been really fun.
Awesome.
Been there for like 5 months. Yeah.
So you decided to go ahead and run for CSM.
Yep.
Undoubtedly, you have some plans. So things that you want to
Yes.
get through going on. Why don't you tell us about a couple of them?
Yes, sure. So just broadly, the last, I'd say like 4 years, I've had a really big interest in the like player motivations and game design that goes into creating an ecosystem that Eve has. Um, it's something wholly unique from any of the other games that I played before, and like I struggle to find it in any other game even now. And that just uniqueness is really fascinating to me. So I spent a lot of time kind of like thinking about how it all works and like kind of reflecting on my own experiences as like a crab, a line member, or whatever, right? And so over the years, I've kind of built up this knowledge base and formed some opinions of my own on issues that I see with the sandbox. And um, I'd say pretty much every CSM candidate has some sort of like goals with the ecosystem and stuff. I think the biggest one for me and the main ecosystem related goal that I'd like to push on the CSM is capital gameplay. Um, being in low sec, we use caps a lot, lots of dreads, lots of faxes. It's super fun. I think it's a shame that the current ecosystem around it is just not really feasible for anyone but pretty much the richest players in the game, right?
Yep.
The price of caps just kind of prices out most groups from what I think is some of the most fun content. Um, so I'd really like to see a more accessible capital ecosystem.
Mhm.
And I think that'd be fun for, I mean, the groups that currently use it would like more people to fight, right? I think it'd be more fun for everyone. And the second thing that I'd really like to push on the CSM and that I've already gotten some success with is more accessibility and UI changes.
Okay.
So um, I I have a lot of fun kind of optimizing my setup and optimizing like fits and theory crafting, right? Taking kind of like a almost like Factorio-esque approach to Eve, where the fun is in optimizing um, how efficiently you can do stuff, right? So I spent a lot of time making my UI better, making like tools to help myself do stuff with Eve, like fleet management tools and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of UI and accessibility options that are kind of missing from the Eve client. Like, for example, there's a lot of really important information that is just a like 5 by 5 pixel dot on your screen. Like, let's say somebody comes into local, right? That's hostile. It's a tiny little thing in the screen. You can't like it's very easy to miss. And I don't think that very crucial information should be very easy to miss. And like realistically, the player base isn't super young, right? Like you should have the accessibility options to make stuff like that bigger on the screen. Or like, for example, with local having the text background be the color of the standing, right?
Right.
And I don't really see a lot of other CSMs kind of pushing for and focusing on something like that. Sure, there's quality of life stuff, but I don't think they've put in the time and the effort to like really run through that position. So that's I think the biggest thing, like biggest campaign point for me that I'm pushing for that's unique from all the other ones.
Okay.
Um, and then the last one is just general ship fitting. My time in Big Ab, a lot of it was spent kind of theory crafting and getting better at that aspect of the game. I'm really into Python and learning how like different ships interact with the Eve ecosystem. I think it's a super fascinating aspect of Eve with a lot of really fun like problem solving challenges and that sort of thing. And with my uh, ex CEO of Deepwater, while I was in Deepwater being Seto, I've advised them a lot on some of the more like nuanced things that kind of fuel the overpowered feeling, like the oppressive feeling of some of the ships in the game. Like, for example, with like the F&I, right? Like, what made that ship the go-to default doctrine for all these different groups? Or like, why is the Zern so good? Or why does this feel bad, right? Like, um, it's easy to say that something is oppressive and that it doesn't feel fun to fight, but it's hard to actually pinpoint the exact balance changes that be needed to make the ship less oppressive, but also still like retain its identity and that sort of
Right.
thing. Like, sure, you could take away all the damage bonuses of the Varga, right, and it might not be so great anymore, right? Might not be so oppressive, but it's not going to be a Varga anymore. It's not going to be a Marauder, a really expensive battleship, right? So, I think through my experience of theory crafting at a pretty high level for Deepwater, and just getting in the time to run through like why does something work, why does something not work, and then being able to test that in game with a competent group has been a really great experience over the last like couple of years,
Yes.
and I think I have a good knowledge base for that.
Okay, excellent. So the next set of questions we're going to go in is more in line of with my communities and my own platform. And Eve Rookies, we've spent 4.5 years now teaching new players how to do, well, pretty much everything in the game, every type of fleet activity. Only thing that we haven't done is gone out and gotten Sov. So we do literally everything else in the game at this point. Um, so, keeping this in mind, what do you think right now one of the biggest barriers to getting new players to undock is?
So I put some thought into this, both when I was new, like middle stages of my Eve career, and now as well. I've had some couple like debates with friends and that sort of thing. I think in some ways, Eve fundamentally is kind of a niche game and isn't necessarily for everyone. But the people that are interested do face a lot of, I think, unnecessary barriers to entry. Um, I think the fundamental one is just skill training, and the time scale um, is really off-putting for a lot of people. Um, and it's a tricky thing to balance, right? Because you need to both consider the ease of experienced players getting more alts for whatever, right? Like clean Sino characters and that sort of thing. But um, I think a slightly increased training speed for the first couple months of a character's existence, or having more basic skills, have fewer, like have a quicker training modifier or something like that, to where the in like skill injector cost is still the same, but you train it quicker, would be
Okay.
something that's really interesting. Um, because like seeing the standard doctrines of a group that you want to fly with and looking at the training time and seeing that it's like 4 months away for a hack that might not even be good by then is just not super great of a feeling. Um, the second thing that I think is there needs to be more in-game information kind of explaining that Eve fundamentally is kind of a social game. I think it's so much more fun when you're flying with people,
Mm-hmm.
and when you're really like out there talking to people. And I think a lot of games these days kind of miss that, where they're a lot less social than they used to be, and so people don't really consider that when they try out Eve for the first time, that it is truly a social game.
Yeah, I
And
totally.
some more systems like guiding people into reputable new player groups would be really interesting, like kind of like a CCP vouched list of like potential new player groups would be really cool.
All right, so keeping that in mind, what role do you think fleets play in player retention? And I'm not talking about just new players, like overall.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Eve is a social game. Um, when you got buddies to fly with, I think this game is a lot more fun. Um, kind of just doing stuff with your friends is just, my opinion at least, always a lot more rewarding. Um, and obviously, fleets drive social engagement, right? You can achieve a lot more with friends than you could alone, and I think sharing experiences with other people is really important for just keeping people coming back.
So earlier, when you were telling us about your experience, you said that you put content together for people. Are you an FC?
No, not
No.
really. I prefer to. be a more supportive role.
Okay.
I've seen some stuff like blops drops and whaling fleets and that sort of thing. But generally, I prefer to like have the Sino, have the Bridge Titan, have the Lynx, have the Hick, right? I find that that's a lot more fun for me, and trying to manage like 10 different roles at once to try and support the fleet and get that through. Yeah.
Okay, so with that in mind, what do you think that CCP could add to the game that would help communities and groups uh, provide content for their players?
I think it's a tricky thing because there are a lot of existing tools in the game that kind of facilitate the fleets. And however, like none of the tools I think that they could add are going to directly get people to undock. They're kind of tools that you use while you're out on a fleet. Um, so I personally think that there should just be more quote unquote content flashpoints, like stuff to drive people to like want to throw a fleet together and go undock and go have fun, right? Like more people in space doing stuff like for example with capitals. Like I don't know, one of your guys in your corp sees a random T1 Dread running ANOMs in some dead end system, right? Like you're gonna go form up and go try and kill it, right? And maybe fight the response fleet. Maybe you like kill it, maybe you don't. You're probably gonna have fun while doing it.
Okay, so kind of switching gears, but still talking about undocking. Do you think that toxicity keeps people from undocking?
I definitely think that there's some toxicity that does. Um, I think there's a natural kind of heightened emotional state for a lot of stuff that happens in Eve because the loss is actual lost time. You don't just respawn with your ship. Um, when you lose something, it does suck, and you don't feel good about it, right? Um, but I think there's been an unacceptable amount of like real life drama being brought into the game, which isn't necessary at all. Like it's there's enough to like in game to call people a noob or whatever, right? Like you don't need to resort to IRL stuff. And like I think it's incredibly important that we keep Eve isolated from IRL politics and that sort of thing.
What kind of content do you think keeps people logging in over and over again?
Uh, I mean personally, I think it's fleet related stuff. Um, I think that's kind of the bread and butter of Eve, because again, it drives social engagement, gives you stuff to do with your friends, and um, like even if you maybe don't feel like doing something that day, if your friend needs you to help them out, right, you're probably gonna log in and undock. And I think the social bonds built through Eve are really special. Because like even with when nobody in my corp is playing Eve, we're probably hanging out on comms together, playing some other game together. And so anything to drive more social engagement, I think, is a really good idea.
Do you feel that the daily opportunities drive logins?
I think they're a good carrot on a stick for people who are already logged in to go out and maybe try something new or just go through the motions, right? I'm generally not a fan of daily things. I feel generally it's used as more of um, a crutch that gets people to log in every day because they feel like they have to because they're missing out on something. In general, I don't think having people feel bad about not logging in is the right way to do that. It should be people excited to log in to go do stuff.
Do you think that we need to encourage people to get into group activities?
Absolutely. I think the Homefront sites were a really good idea. I think we should do more of that stuff where it's kind of very new player focused with like fitting limitations for T1 modules and that sort of thing to really get people talking to each other. And that's one of the things that I think that I can provide really good feedback on. So I have a lot of experience multi-boxing, And I do think it's really important to have activities in the game that aren't multi-boxable. And I think I can provide really unique feedback on how to implement mechanics that disincentivize like just cheesing it with 5 alts, right? So that people actually have to talk to each other.
Do you feel that we should have more solo activities in the game?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that um, is kind of missing from the game is activities that are high APM but yield high end rewards. I think like a good example of that is like T6s, where you can't really multi-box them or scale past one account. Um, I think there should be more content like that. It's a little hard to implement in the sandbox, but I'm pretty confident that CCP can add some stuff like that. And again, I have a lot of experience multi-boxing. I think I can provide some really valuable feedback on how to limit that sort of thing.
Okay. Now, if you could ask CCP for one quality of life change, what would it be? And do not say more bookmarks because other people have,
A few moments
have
later.
already
I
come up
mean,
with that.
look, I want some more bookmark folders. That would be really nice. But like, um, it's a hard question, especially because a lot of the quality of life things, um, I feel like it's just small stuff, right? Like here and there, stuff that's really annoying. I think a really interesting change would be to add more like resizability options to like the overview or like font size options. Like it's hard to read sometimes. It'd be
Yeah,
cool if you could like increase the spacing between like entries on it, or if you could like change the font or like make certain things bold, certain things colored, like that sort of thing would be really interesting.
especially for those of us who have 4K monitors.
Yeah, 100%.
That's
Um,
always something I'm complaining about. I'm
yeah.
told just blow it up to 150%.
Well, I mean, like you shouldn't have to sacrifice
No
like the
space.
density of your
Yeah,
information just because you can't resize something,
yeah.
right? And I mean, hey, that's why I'm running on like a big accessibility platform. Like I think it's super important, right? Like you shouldn't miss critical information because it's tiny on your screen. You can't resize it, right? Like I think
Yep.
that's not where the barrier should be. The barrier should be, are you paying attention, right? Like it 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 shouldn't be because it's a tiny little thing in the bottom left of your screen, right? I don't know.
Totally agree. So before we get into the CSM specific questions,
Yeah,
this summer we had a campaign down in Providence. Do you know what I'm talking
yep.
about? Okay.
Yeah,
So,
the absolute order one.
correct, correct. Um, basically, the Eve community kind of got tired of Absolute Order's toxic existence and decided to do something about it. Do you have any
Yep.
feelings about this campaign? Good, bad, ugly?
I think it was really interesting. There's a lot of people, so I hang out in a lot of ETH discords, talking to people from all sorts of places in ETH, and there's a surprising number of people who I didn't see generally participating in large campaigns, kind of dipping their toes into that sort of content, which I think was really interesting. Um, well, I really don't like the very, let's just say, IRL politics inspired takes that they have and kind of
Mm-hmm.
theming and stuff that they have going on. In some ways, I do appreciate them kind of being the bad guy that kind of unites everybody against them. I think there's definitely a sort of value in that. Whether that was their intention or not, I don't think it is. But um, it's also funny. So as a part of Big Ab, we were contracted to evict Wrecking Crew, which is also a resident of like the Pravi area near where Absolute Order was, and it was really frustrating because we all wanted to also destroy. I think it's the YMP keep,
Yeah.
if I'm not wrong. Yeah, because we destroyed. I want to say 3 other ones that were RC. The time zones just didn't really match. Where we're mostly US, a little bit of EU, or we're at the time in Big Ab, and just didn't have the numbers in the time zone that the keep was set for to really do anything there. So it's not kind of nice seeing that thing dead.
Yeah, it was a really interesting way to kind of MPSI the whole like big operation. And
Yeah, it was cool watching it. It was cool watching it.
I know a lot of people from, my own community went out to participate, and they'll never go out to nullsec and never be able to get into some of these really big
Yeah,
operations. And they thought it was actually pretty cool. Not cool enough to go and
yeah.
live out in null, but cool
I
enough
mean,
to.
I like, and I have this in my post in the about me. I think one of the things that also kind of sets me apart is I have this continual hunger to try out new things in Eve, kind of experience as much of the sandbox as I can. Um, like I'm not really playing to watch my wallet go up. I'm not playing to get a bunch of kills. I'm playing to experience more of Eve. I love this game. I think this game is amazing, and so I think it's always really cool to see people trying out a new area of Eve. Um,
Absolutely.
Regardless of the context. I think it's just great. Like, because there's so much that people miss when they just stay in their one little area of space. Like,
Yeah.
even if it's comfortable, like, there's just so much cool stuff to experience in this game that they're just missing out on. You know?
Yeah, and that's why Eve Rookies does literally everything at this point. I mean, this year we even got into Alliance tournament stuff. So, that wasn't on my 2025 bingo card either. But it's
Yeah,
been really cool seeing, the community kind of latch on to this and take
yeah.
off with it.
It's really cool watching it. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to get into my favorite part, the CSM specific questions.
yeah.
So, if you make it onto the CSM, what other candidates or candidate types do you think that you want to work with?
So, I've already interacted with a lot of the CSM candidates, either through trying to get certain balance things changed or just playing the game and stuff. And I'd say broadly, a lot of them are just generally really good people that obviously know a lot about the game and stuff. But if I had to choose, I think the biggest kind of value or character trait that I'm looking for in people to work with is people who aren't going to just blindly advocate for changes that benefit their group. Um, I think the most important thing for a CSM member to have is like, yes, you need to represent your players. That's important, but I think you need to care a lot about the overall health of the game.
Yeah.
Where like concessions sometimes do need to be made, like to improve the overall health of the ecosystem and kind of make um, the game more fun for everyone, right? And it might suck for your group temporarily as the game kind of shuffles around a bit. Like if you're relying on a specific doctrine really hard and it's kind of just creating a really toxic meta around it,
Right.
like kind of sucks, but like that's part of Eve. You gotta adapt to that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's the most important thing, like the ability to kind of put aside the potential short-term negative impacts a change will have on your group if it overall is going to really benefit the game.
Looking at the last couple CSM councils, do you think that there's an area in space that continuously gets underrepresented?
To be honest, I think with the last two CSMs, especially the last one, we've had a really good spread of representation. Um, I think there's always the issue of high sec players. I think generally kind of having an issue organizing around one candidate,
Yeah.
which historically was wormholers, but with Mark Resurrectus and then the falling wormhole CSMs, like I think they kind of got their stuff together for that. Um, and then with Drake obviously being the Patron candidate,
Yeah.
I think he's gotten some really good stuff through. Yeah, so I'll be honest, it's kind of hard to choose one. And again, that's why I'm running on an accessibility and UI base. Like, I don't think that there's enough thought put into that by the CSM for how important it is, and because it impacts everybody, right?
It really does. So, when you are on the CSM, you're going to take issues to them. but you're going to have to show player support for those issues. How do you think you're going to do that?
I plan on making a little feedback Discord kind of issue tracker with people being able to more easily see issues that other players have brought forward. I think that's a really effective way of kind of managing feedback, just having like a thread for issues and people being able to respond to those and kind of add their own thoughts. The other thing is I have a lot of friends and connections across the game in different areas of space. And I get feedback on certain things, like let's say that there's a suggestion for a UI change, and I can kind of spread that out through my connections and get good feedback on that.
Then what do you think you're going to do if a player or players approach you with issues that or suggestions that you just absolutely do not agree with?
So one of my favorite activities to do is just yapping about Eve. I absolutely love debating my ideas. I like being proven wrong, right? I like kind of honing my mental image of how the Eve ecosystem works. So ideally, I'd love to have a discussion with them on why they believe the problem should be fixed in a certain way, or why they believe something that like is an issue. And I'd hope I'd be able to kind of show them my way of thinking. I do fundamentally think that there are some things that you're just going to disagree with, right? And that's kind of part of it. If one group wants their area of space to be more profitable or whatever, right? And I don't think so. Like, there are sometimes just going to be disagreements, right? But I think having both sides kind of get an understanding to the motivations behind the other is really important. And that only comes through dialogue and discussing ideas.
So you've repeatedly said over and over again that you like capital warfare. What do you
Yep.
think that you're going to do if CCP says during a meeting, we're getting rid of capitals, they're not new player friendly, we're just going to throw them straight out of the game?
Well, I hope they don't do that. I think it'd be a really interesting topic of discussion to have, kind of to see like what their reasoning is, what their like trains of thought are, what their data shows, like that kind of thing. And I've had my mind changed on lots of different issues over the years on things that I thought I was pretty set in stone on, but through a new viewpoint or a different argument, I kind of came around to different ideas. It definitely helps that I've kind of participated in so many different aspects of like what the Eve sandbox has. Where, like for example, when I started off in Horde, I did a lot of mining, right? Like I went primarily just on strat ops for PvP, and I did mining for ISK, and I didn't really understand the grievances of like hunters, for example, right? So now, having also hunted, I can kind of see both sides on that. To be a really interesting discussion on how they justify their decision making process on that.
Okay, cool. So then you get elected and you have your very first meeting where they
Yeah.
reveal to you what they're doing for your term, more or less, what is going to be out in the next expansion.
Yeah.
And there isn't one thing that's coming out that is part of your gameplay. That's not part of your bread and butter, that is your absolute expertise. They're not going to do anything with UI. They're not going to do anything with capitals or any. So, how do you think you're going to approach that particular CSM?
I think there's always quality of life work that can be done for even when the primary focus of a expansion goes one way. The other thing is I have played in most areas of K-Space. I have done ratting, I've done mining, I've done small gang rooms, I've done the whaling PvP, I've done big fleet PvP, low sec stuff, FAC war stuff, right? I think I might not be a subject matter expert in all of them, but I have enough time invested in each that I think I'd have useful feedback and opinions to give on that sort of thing and on the balancing of changes like that.
Okay, cool. Good answer. And the last thing, for the last two CSMs at least, maybe even the last 3, 4, 5, projection has been a huge topic. How
Yeah.
do you plan on making sure that CCP continues with that work on the projection problem?
I'll be honest, I think they've already been taking the steps to kind of tackle it. My it's a very complex issue, and I think it's a lot more complicated than a lot of people make it out to be. Just because it does impact so many different groups and like the daily process of how they play Eve. For example, with the common rhetoric of just giving like nerfing antis, removing antis, that sort of thing. Like in the current way that Sov is set up and the groups are set up in Null, ANSIs are pretty much required to sustain the size of groups, right? So I think that there are steps that you can take going towards it. My opinion is that there should be at least some sort of fatigue on ANSIs. I think having just straight jump fatigue would be too harsh and too punishing for people just trying to rat, for example. And I think it's really important to like not let those voices go unheard.
So do you think
But
that... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I think they've already been making a lot of good changes towards it. Like, I think the change with ansiplexes and flex structures on needing to repair them was really important. I think that's part of it. Like, if you just had the old ansis with fatigue, where if it was bashed, they wouldn't even need to show up in space to go defend their assets. They'd just auto repair in X amount of time, right? I think that having to actively manage your sprawl and your empire is a really important change. I hope they continue down the line of making holding massive amounts of territory more difficult.
So if you get elected and you find out that, they made the changes this year and that's pretty much only their plans, are you going to just say, okay, or would you say something, or kind of bring up that more needs to be done?
I mean, obviously, I'm going to advocate for more. I think the game would be in a healthier state with less projection, like subcap projection. I think the amount of space that groups can cover from a very limited amounts of system, like living in a very condensed system, is really high. Like I'm in a block, and I think it is kind of absurd how far you can travel with a well set up Ansiplex network. And I think more local fights lead to more engaging content because it's a lot less all or nothing, and there's a lot more room for people to make mistakes. Because like for example, in the current war, the core team of 4 and the core team of goons are massive and really experienced and pretty accomplished, right? So when you have these big blocks condensing into large groups, there's a lot less room for error because you don't have people who are less experienced. Like if it's just a bunch of small groups, a lot more people are going to make mistakes, and I think that leads to more interesting content.
And since we have a few more minutes before we need to wrap this up, I'll ask, are you satisfied with the amount of space blocks can hold? Or do you think that that needs to be minimized as well?
I think with the number of players in the blocks, the actual amount of space isn't necessarily the issue. It's that they can hold it from one area. I think ideally, and I think a realistic end goal to aim for is where there might be a bunch of alliances that are blued, adding up to the total number of players in a block, right? So, for example, like Horde has, I think, roughly like 5,000 active characters on Zkill. I think the blocks adding up total like between all of their blues is fine, but I think they should be a lot more spread out within their space, where it's less condensed into these like 1 or 2 staging systems.
Okay. So now we're going to go into the final thoughts. Why should players vote for you? And specifically, why should my communities put you on our ballot?
I think I offer my like quality of life and UI accessibility platform is really unique among all the other candidates. And I think it's a really important issue. That's why I'm running. And I think it doesn't really have the representation it deserves, even though it affects everybody that plays the game. Everybody interacts with the game client. I think everybody deserves a better experience with that.
Okay. And go ahead.
Oh, sorry. The other part is I think I have a wide enough experience across different areas of the game where, regardless of what the next expansion is or what the area of focus is, that I'll be able to provide really effective feedback and talk to my connections across the community to kind of get player voices heard.
Okay, excellent. Then where can people find you if they want to ask you more questions or talk to you about some issues?
Sure, Discord. Discord's the best way. I check Discord every day. You'll probably, if you join the EVE Online Discord server, you'll probably see me yapping in there about EVE. Just my messages are open. Just hit me up with whatever questions, concerns, anything. I'd love to answer all your questions.
Excellent. Do you answer your EVE mail?
I can start checking that. Generally, I use Discord though.
Okay, perfect. Then we're going to get that information. We'll also get your thread down in the description when the video goes up.
Sounds
Best
good.
of luck with your campaign.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.